I've told people I want to have a legendary family life. And there is no ego in when I say that, because for me, a legendary family life just means all the things I dreamed of as a kid that I could never do, that my parents could never provide, I'd be able to still live out and do. I'm going to do all the things my dad never got a chance to do in his lifetime. And that gives me a real momentum and foundation that I feel is strong and worthy, that keeps me propelling forward.
Listener, I've been wanting to get Jim Sheils on the podcast for quite some time. His book, The Family Board Meeting, I just found out re-released this past year and hit #1 on the Wall Street Journal best-selling list. Jim has spoken to Front Row Dads in the past. He is a great friend of the GoBundance community and the Front Row Dad community. We've had Mike McCarthy on the episode, on the podcast, who was the founder of GoBundance, John Broman, the founder of Front Row Dads. And a lot of members of our community are fans of those, and Jim is as well. Jim, I found out, lives here in St. Augustine, where I just moved, and he's very involved in real estate investments. I mean, his portfolio included $300 million in deals in 2022. He has a popular book called The Family Board Meeting I referenced. He also is the co-founder of a company called 18 Summers. Is all about making sure that we be intentional with our time with our kids, because we only have 18 summers with them. He has completed 22 years in real estate investing with over 2,000 acquisitions and rehabs, and just such an awesome conversation. So if you haven't heard of Jim Sheils, highly recommend you to stay in touch with him. I try to ask him as many questions as possible, draw out the golden nuggets. We get into his process to uncover your unique abilities. We cover the building phase versus the now phase, like once it's grown in a business, and how he would approach it. We talk a little bit about the seasons of business and how to unplug intentionally using a fall season. So much good. I'm fired up to go back and re-listen to this episode. So another great episode on the Better Than Rich Show with Jim Sheils. Welcome to the Better Than Rich Show with your hosts, Andrew Biggs and Mike Abramowitz. The Better Than Rich Show helps ambitious leaders who are on a mission to leave the world better than they found it, change their perspective on what's important, increase their income and impact, and systemize their life and business. If you've ever struggled with finding your purpose, have felt disconnected or distracted, or found yourself going through the motions, this show will remind you that what you do matters and will re-inspire you to chase your highest dreams. It's time for you to become better than rich. And welcome back to the Better Than Rich Show. I am your host today, Mike Abramowitz, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. I've been gifted this book called The Family Board Meeting by a couple of my Front Row Dad brothers years ago. I've heard Hal Elrod. Many of you guys know I'm a Cutco guy, so 20 years in Cutco. Hal Elrod, John Broman, Justin Donald, a lot of these individuals that have been on the podcast. This book has come up many, many times over, and I was reading it, and there was one part of the book that said, I took my son to the lighthouse in St. Augustine as one of our daddy dates. And I'm like, wait a minute, what the hell? Does Jim live in St. Augustine? So I reached out to the Front Row Dad Brotherhood. I was like, does anyone know if Jim lives in St. Augustine? And then I got 3 responses. Yes, he does. I was like, can someone make the connection? Jim Sheils, welcome to the Better Than Rich Show, brother. Really excited to have you here, man.
Good to be here, Mike. Thanks.
Well, this book has been tossed around so many times in conversations, and it's a very, very simple read, under 100 pages. So I digested it in one sit. Yep. I have a couple of pages folded. I revisit quite frequently with really intentional questions. My son James is only 3, but I still implement these practices with him very intentionally. I want to just first off say thank you for putting this masterpiece together. You just shared that it hit #1 on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. So congrats to you on that, man. Thanks. On the re-release and everything deserving there. For listeners that don't follow your work, I know a lot of our listeners do. I'm sure many of our listeners have read the book, but for those that don't, what's the backstory? What is the inspiration of the family board meeting, because I want to get into what you're doing right now, because the real estate stuff you're doing is incredible. But I'd love to really have our listeners hear your origin story as a family man with a business, because that's who a lot of our listeners are.
Yeah, I'd say, a lot of the book itself, I mean, the inception came out of my own family and the need to, the desire to want to live a better family life, which, is a big thing in Front Row Dads. You're, family men with businesses, not the opposite. And so the book came out of the need. And really a lot of that uh, catalyst came in 2011. I remember I was sent an article about a guy named Walter Isaacson. And his claim to fame is he was Steve Jobs' biographer. And I'll never forget this. This article said Steve Jobs spent his final days surrounded by close family and used the opportunity for final interviews to explain to his wife and children why he wasn't always there for them. And it went on to say Steve Jobs, said, I wanted my family to know who I was. I wasn't there for them, and I wanted to explain why, and I hope they would understand. And this guy Isaacson, I don't know him, but he's a famous biographer. He said to Steve Jobs, Steve, are you glad you had a family? Are you glad you had children? And it's a powerful question for, a guy on his final days. And they said, Steve fired right back. And he said, it's 10,000 times better than anything I've ever done. And when you think about that, it was at a time that I really needed to hear that. Steve Jobs had just passed away a few days earlier, when I got sent this article. And I saw all the murals and all the, candlelight vigils, but no one was talking about this. And at first, this really hit me hard, Mike, reading this. And I crossed up my arms and I thought, well, that's not me. Steve Jobs had a reputation for being a jerk. And it became very apparent to me that if the rug of health had been ripped out from underneath me, the same way it had been Steve Jobs, I would have been in the same situation 6 months later, doing final interviews to explain to my wife and children. And it was a big time in my life. I'm in real estate now and things are going great now. But, back then I had survived the '08 meltdown by the skin of my teeth, protected my investors by the skin of my teeth. And we were back on the rise, but we still had major bandages on. And I had, at that time, was going through the process to adopt my two oldest sons. We now have 5 children, a mixture of adopted and biological, but I was adopting them. And the day I had read that article, sitting in my little home office, I had just been approved to donate a kidney to my father, and that was a major journey that I went through. And you get put to the point of critical, Mike, and I don't think you can ever think of things the same. People are like, oh, did you set out to be, the family guy or family board meetings in this 18 Summers movement? I said, no, I was concerned I wasn't going to be a good father or a good husband. And I got put to a point of critical of going through a kidney donation with my father and adopting children. And that's what brought me to it. And so I had no desire to write this book, none. I felt uncomfortable. I felt ill-equipped. I wasn't a family therapist, but I had such a passion. And when I started to speak about it pretty vulnerably and emotionally at things like Front Row Dads, people said, wow, this little book of principles and action steps you've put together can make a difference. And that's where it came about. But it was there was never a golden plan to do it. I can tell you that.
Well, it is. I'm so grateful that you put it together, and it's so what's so interesting for me is the 18 Summers concept is what sticks, because our son, for those listeners know the story, but I'll just fill you in. My son was born at 1 pound 4 ounces on New Year's Eve.
Wow.
In 2020. So we were in the hospital with him for 8.5 months. So his first summer when he was in the hospital, 18 Summers, summer 1 was like, hopefully this kid makes it. So he got out of the hospital September 10th, 2021. So his second summer the summer of 2022 was, okay, he's starting to he's home for the first year. We're really starting to, make some transitions. He's starting to make some progress. And then this summer of 2023 that we just finished was his first time where he was off the ventilator. He got his trach out in April. And we took a 3-week road trip because of this idea of the 18 Summers. Like, all right, we finally have a chance where we're freed from the barriers of medical complexities. Let's take advantage of it. So we took 3 days off. I had no cell phone, no technology. Took our family. We drove up to see her family in Indiana, a lot of my family and her family in Philadelphia, New Jersey, where I'm from. 3 weeks off, came back. And what I love most about what you teach is the passive income model using, now in your vehicle is real estate, we teach a lot of like business systemization to buy back our time, but I still produce $12,000 in profits during 3 weeks of me not doing anything. And there's so much power in that. What you do, what you teach, living as an example of that, with a wife, with 5 kids. I'm just like, I'm a student of your life, of your lineage. And I'm just so grateful for everything that you're teaching. And I'm doing my part in trying to pay it forward as well. Can you speak to just the idea of the power of the 18 Summers intentionality from your lens, or from some of the students or some of the clients that you've worked with? And also pairing that as like almost a bridge to this passive income freedom that has allowed you to travel and do the things that you want to do and have those freedoms as a family man. Whatever direction you feel like you'd like to take that.
Yeah, no, and congrats on your son. Again, you'll never be the same, and that's a tough time. But sometimes you're molded into a better person through our tough times. That's what I've learned. There's a greater appreciation which will never be taken away from you and your wife or your son. And greater appreciation is what 18 Summers, the whole principle I was taught by a mentor of mine, speaks. There is a finite amount of time. Mike, there was so much crap. When I went into entrepreneurship almost 25 years ago and into my real estate investing, that it was put your head down, do whatever it takes, get back to your family in 5 to 10 years, they'll understand. That's horrible advice. That's horrible advice, because the years are not all created equal. You're going to see how much this changes. Now that I have kids ranging from 2 to 20, I can see that, man, this principle of 18 Summers, this positive math equation that keeps you focused and choosing differently, is so important, and there was a study. It showed almost 85% of the average people out there will spend that amount of time with their child. 85% of all the quality time they ever have, the average person will spend by the end of the 18th summer. So that means, take it or leave it, you have a great gift right now if your children are under the age of 18. And I believe if you spend that gift wisely in time and attention, then they're going to come back for more after they're 18. You're not going to be the average person with only 15% of the time left. You get up to 20, 25, 30, 35% more time and true quality time. And that's what 18 Summers is all about. As John talks about with that, family men with businesses. I wanted to design my business where my family life would not suffer. It'd be accelerated. And so I was always looking for ways where I want to do my best. I want to offer good services, but I will, without apology, spend a lot of time with my family. And what I kept going back to was real estate and planting seeds that you don't necessarily eat off of right away, but as the plants start to grow, they start to create shade, they start to create food and opportunity. And that's what I saw. If I really wanted to make the most of the 18 Summers, I could not go the corporate route. There was just no way. There was too many shackles. I couldn't do it. It wouldn't afford me some of the things I like to do. I am not a big material guy. And if you are, there's no problem with that. But I've never been into Rolexes. But man, if I can dive with sharks with my 3-year-old daughter next to me in the Caribbean, or I can be in Ireland visiting the roots of my family with all of my kids at my side, and I can pay for us all with their best friends to come to Costa Rica for 2 weeks with us. That's what it's about for me. And the passive income can keep coming in to allow me to do those things and not be set, hugely back the same way you did. And that is something that I was never taught. I was never taught income producing assets in high school or college, something I had to learn on my own. Some of the people in those books behind you taught me that, actually.
So I want to go dive right into tactical here for a moment. I want to park here for just a second, because I have found, especially those in the real estate space, have a fair amount of limiting beliefs. And John Vroman brought Dan Martell in to speak to us at Front Row Dads, and then I spoke at GoBundance. So a week after he spoke at GoBundance, so we've kind of crossed paths. But he's a powerhouse. His book has been a playbook for me, and it's been really remarkable to see the benefits of what it's done for my life. the concept here of real estate agents, why I bring up Dan Martell, he said real estate agents need to build a business that they can do forever. And most of the time, real estate agents, they're constant reactionary and they're under the illusion that only they could do the thing. My clients only do business with me. So they're constantly a bottleneck and always in reaction mode. And I know your space is more of the real estate investment space, but I hear it on the investment side too, where it's like, I'm the only one who can attract deals or close the deals or, foster these relationships. Or if it's the syndicator, it's like, I'm the only one that they trust with their money. So the disillusionment of the business owner is always that I'm the only one who could do the thing. I would love for you to talk through, number one, what other disillusionments exist for this avatar? And then number two, how might you be able to dispel some of them to maybe put this person at ease to say, hey, listen, you could do it too. You could buy back your time as long as you make it a priority.
Yeah. I mean, so Dan is a pretty good friend of mine. He's actually a case study in our book. And he didn't even know I was a real estate investor. Literally, we were RVing through Canada. He saw that we were there. He's like, come to my house. So we went to his house. Our families got together. He hosted us for 2 nights. He's like, wait, you're in real estate? I thought you kind of, I don't know, did family books and had trust fund money or something. I'm like, no, I had the opposite of a trust fund. And I think we talked a little bit about this. Realtors are doing a complete self-promotion, whether it's needed or not, to do transactional business. It's all transactional. And for me, Mike, I'm 24 years in. I've only had my real estate license for the last 4 to 5 years. I didn't want to be a realtor. I wanted to be an investor. And I knew that, and I don't want to steer anyone wrong here. Look, commissions are important. And now I get great transactional money through my build to rent business. But I was always in the mindset of what do I do with that money? I want to plant it into income producing assets. And if a lot of realtors will continue to do transactions with not planting any seeds into the very industry that they're in. They're transacting and they're not stopping to plant seeds within their own industry, within properties. And I think that is a real trap where people say, well, I have to be, I'm the face, and they only want to do that for me. Okay, then, but what are you doing to leverage away from that? Are you taking some of your income and putting it into properties? Oh, well, no, that's only going to get me $500 a month. What good's that going to do? Yeah, but that's one property. What about the next and the next and the next and the next and the next? And that's where I see a lot of real estate people get confused. They get stuck on purely transactional. And that's dangerous. Now, I've seen both sides. I've been on the only investment side where I invested myself to the hill and then I have no cash. That's not good either because then I can't go travel. So there's a balance here. But I think for a lot of real estate people out there, in order to step back, like Dan teaches us way better than me, you can put people in place where you're not like that. Remember that old Bugs Bunny cartoon, the Looney Tunes, the baseball team doesn't show up. So Bugs Bunny's playing first base, second base, third base, pitching home, and he's running to each position. I think we get in that mode as this solopreneur real estate agent. And I don't think it has to be that way. But at the same time, you not only have to put people in place like Dan teaches, but you need to be investing into your own world. It's crazy how many real estate agents, successful ones I see, Mike, they make this money and they throw it in the stock market. I'm like, you are on the inside track of your market or potential deals. Or like I've been in GoBundance for, 10 years. Deal opportunities within real estate, something you conceptualize and understand, and they don't invest in it.
It's interesting because for me, I saw my dad, he had like 20 something properties and then he sold them out of desperation at one point before I was born. And he got like, if he held on to him, he would have been in a totally different situation. But today he's 82 years old, runs his plumbing business, still works 6 days a week. So it's like, I took that piece from him and I bought my first house when I was 20 in college and I had 3 rental properties by 22, rented them out, house hacking before it was cool. But unlike you, I did not make it out of that economic recession. I went belly up. I lost the houses, $130,000 negative. I had a 400 credit score. So for all of my 20s into my 30s, It was climbing out of this crazy hole. And over the last decade to build back up to where now I'm an accredited investor with a high 700 credit score, the path to get there, I look back now and I'm like, man, it was filled with a lot of lessons, but I didn't have the backing in real estate at all. All I was trying to do was just get ahead. I just wanted to have the retirement at 40 freedom was kind of like the big thing I was pushing myself towards in my 20s. My curiosity for you might be, I know Dan is like the main guy that teaches this, and I followed a lot of his stuff, but like, man, you probably put some stuff into place to like, what have you done to protect yourself from all the distractions? Like, what are the boundaries that maybe you have put in place? If you can get tactical, again, it's hard. I know it's just a conversation, but like,
I'm happy to. I'm always trying to learn. And I'm a big fan of strategic coach and Dan Sullivan. I know you've probably heard of them out of Canada. Been with Dan a few years. Is he up there too?
Yeah, I gotta.
Two of his main team members, Shannon Waller and Julia Waller, are good friends. They've come to our family retreats. They taught me about unique ability. And there some things that you can do or I can do, Mike, and I finally have taken ownership of. It's like breathing for you and I, but it is really a remarkable talent or gift from outside people looking in. And we will take that unique ability sometimes for granted. And instead of going deeper into it, try to develop things where, at this age, I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And I'm okay. When you're young, yeah, you want to experiment, but there's already some real clues there of things that you can really excel at. And instead of going deeper and just owning those unique abilities and delegating out the rest, we'll try to learn those. We'll try to ignore them or downplay their power. And that's a big mistake. I have really tried to hone into my unique abilities. And that's what I'm going to bring to my 18 Summers business, to my real estate ventures, and I'm going to delegate the rest. And I'm going to do it without feeling guilty. Mike, if I was to do our accounting or admin work, we'd be in a lot of trouble. But we all try to do those things that we stink at, and I don't anymore. I without even with joking and self-deprecating, I'm going to hand those things off. And I'm only going to try to work on the highest unique abilities that I've shown bring value to what I do, to the ventures we have, to the profits we want to create, not only for us, for our investors. And that's how I'm going to serve best. I'm also, big on not having distractions. So right now, like, I'll invite you over. Some people always wanted the big corner office, right? I always wanted just the little office in the corner of my yard. So I've got my little surf shack, 15 feet from my house, 4-second commute to the ocean. So I can be seeing my family or up at the ocean real quick, but I get a lot done in here. I'm very focused. This is my mastermind room, and I'm separated. We have 140 plus employees. I talk to about 7 of them, maybe. And I'm really focused. I have a great partner who handles operations and management. I'm really good at sales and business development, and I stick to that. That's been a really important part of kind of my journey to leverage that. Also, I've really started to, there are some plus and minuses, Mike, to the solopreneur. To saying, I just want to have my own business. It's just me. I don't want to deal with people. And you can do well like that. But I've learned if you can get great people around you, those 3 weeks on the road that you take, or, a month in Costa Rica I take, are going to be that much easier. And so, I would look at, if you're viewing people of, if I have to hire people or, hire outside services, that's going to be such a headache and this and that. I'll just do it all myself. Well, you could take away all the freedoms that, you're proposing that you want to be able to do.
I have follow-ups. This is the meat. I really am so glad that you're going here, because this is so relevant. Just to click on what you just said, the idea of me do it once is so prominent in a lot of the listeners' heads, where it's like, it's just so much easier. Let me just do it, because there's like this disillusion of like, I only need to do it this one time until the next time. So it's like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to get it done. And then they do it to get the task done, not thinking that there's going to be a future time that task is going to need to get done again. So what we teach in our community with Better Than Rich is we teach, do the task as if it's the only time you're ever going to do the task, but somebody else is going to do it every time you're going to do it in the future. Hence Dan Martell's camcorder method. It's like, always record yourself. So whenever I'm doing something, I just record myself doing it with the anticipation that if I will ever have to do it again in the future, it's recorded and somebody else can turn that video into an SOP or a playbook, as Dan calls it. Really simple, but it's just like this switch. But when it comes to hiring talent, it's no different. It's like, oh my God, I got to go find people, attract them to work with me, make sure they're qualified, make sure they can do the job, onboard them correctly, retain them so they don't quit, because if they quit, I got to do the whole process all over again. There's so much friction in that process that it's overwhelming. They're like, I'm just not going to scale. I'm just going to remain a solopreneur. So what we try to do is like demystify and simplify that as much as possible. But I'm so glad that you're hitting on that, because it is a real problem. It is a time suck. It does take time, but it's like that one step back that take two steps forward to find good who's and put those who's in place. So before I go to my questions, anything you want to click on that, or I just want to give you the chance?
No, I think your background, this is something that, again, I was very lucky. I kind of got a little Forrest Gumped years ago at a real estate event. I was teaching at one of Kiyosaki's first real estate event as a staff member. And this guy comes in, he had a really funny accent and great message. And I spoke as well about how I was rehabbing houses. And he came up and said, do you want to join my mentoring group? I'm just starting it. I said, sure. It was Keith Cunningham. So I got to be in Keith Cunningham's mentoring group before he was Keith Cunningham, really, if people knew him, for almost 5 years. And these were lessons that Keith kept saying, where he was about effective action. And this goes back to unique abilities and effective action, where Keith is like, you need to be finding deals. What are you doing redesigning your business card? You got to find deals. So for years, my real estate success right here where we were, because I was in the greater Jacksonville area, Monday morning, the alarm would go off. I knew by Friday I had to have 2 to 3 properties under contract to have a successful week. And that's how I broke down my life for several years. Hal and I talked about this. I said, Hal, this was my one needle mover. I knew, because I was doing bulk foreclosures, that if I just focused week in and week out, buying 2 to 3 a week, I was going to be building in the direction I have. That was my clear action step for the week. And I think if people would get clear on what makes them the most money daily or weekly, that will start to help them make better decisions on how they're spending their time as well, and get better results, which of course will allow them to take more time off.
So this is a perfect segue into the question. What was your process to uncover your unique abilities? That maybe there was a framework or blueprint or something that you followed that maybe kind of helped you reveal that maybe someone can model?
You know, I feel really lucky. I was in really good mastermind groups. And when you're around people that you like and trust, they can start to point them out for you. They can start to point out things that you're not great at. Like, I'm not the detail guy. I'm not the accountant. I need to be able to how to oversee those things and analyze them, but not to actually do that work. And I remember people being able to say to me, wow, you have a real good way of simplifying the complicated. You know, you're really good at building trust. You know, you're good at getting in front of the crowd and speaking on something. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that. I had a detection, but then there was always these doubts. So I had people in good mastermind groups helping point me in the right direction of saying, do you realize you're good at this? You have a talent for this. So that was key. The other thing, the process was, I was told years ago, back in the Keith days, a good real estate investor can say their niche in one sentence. One sentence. Because if they're dabbling into every little niche and piece, they're a jack of all trades, master of none. It was the guys who, again, this is Keith, who made it boring. They're doing the same thing over and over. He says, you make that part that makes you money boring and predictable, you have plenty of time to surf, jump out of airplanes, do what you want. So I always tried to say, for real estate investing, could I get down to one sentence? You know, for years, it was, when I started out, I would buy, fix HUD foreclosures and resell them to FHA buyers. Boom, that was it. Then I'd buy and fix up old properties and rent them out. And then, I would buy foreclosures in bulk and either rent them or sell them. So it was, in Northeast Florida. And now today, I build new construction properties in high growth markets in Florida. That's my one sentence. And the more I've had the discipline to go deep into that, Mike, that's my process. I get on the inside track. I get the ability of volume. I get people to understand, oh, that's the guy you go to for that. If that's the guy you go to for that, you want to have that. And you can only do that if you niche down.
Hmm. And these focuses, though, especially those three you just said, were these pre-existing, or were you like the founder of these? And the real question that comes from that is, right now you said you have 140 employees or staff members that I heard, but like in the origin phases of any of these initiatives that you were taking as you were uncovering this, was it were there always a team in place, or was there ever a point in time where it's like one of these initiatives that you started was just like you, and then you attracted the team to kind of help
Oh,
you?
it always starts with you, I think. It started with me making an offer on my first property in Lompoc, California, almost 25 years ago. And I brought in a partner with that. And then we did deals together for years. And then I went off on my own, and I always had a small staff. But in the last 5 years, I actually teamed up with a builder who we were already doing deals back and forth. He loved the operations and management, and he needed someone to do the sales and business development. So it started small with my own little team, and then I merged my company with his to become a partner, because now I get to leverage into this bigger company. I still have autonomy. I still have he knows my family values very clearly. He's been to 18 summers talks and workshops plenty of times. So I get my space. So sometimes right now, I'm a partner in a business. I don't even have that business. I mean, I have my family education, but I was able to step into something bigger and now even have more freedoms, if that makes sense. But the other one started at just me, like you said that. And then you'd bring on small people. Like Keith would say, if you're doing $10 to $15 an hour work and you're making over six figures, you've stalemated yourself. So really, the starting point to back way up, if it started with me, the first thing you want to take off your plate is $10 to $15 an hour work. If you're doing that, how are you going to ever grow?
So there's so many different directions that I want to take this. So I'm glad that you live local so we can grab coffee and keep chatting, because selfishly I'm like, all right, I want to ask you more questions about me, but I got to keep in mind that the listener also has questions that they might want. I want to transition or pivot. I want to pivot just a smidge on this question that I have on here. In business, there are different seasons. The way I teach it, I teach the seasons philosophy of winter, spring, summer, fall. Winter is the unpredictable season. Spring, we're planting the seeds. Summer, we're grinding. And fall, we reap the rewards of what we planted in the spring. I don't know if you align with the seasons philosophy, but hypothetically, using that as an analogy, if you were in a fall season where you are reaping the rewards, you're like, I landed that deal. We got that contract. Things are going really good. And you have 5 kids, you're married, you have multiple businesses, multiple streams of income. What is your process to personally take your step back to reevaluate? Are you still on the right path, aligned with those values, aligned with your vision, aligned with your core principles? Because sometimes we get so into the season of summer of doing and the spring of planting, or the winter of reacting, that during that fall season of reevaluating, we end up just trying to just go into another season instead of taking the step back to reevaluate. So I would just love to hear you riff on what is your process for reevaluating, just to make sure that you're still in alignment.
Yeah, I reevaluate probably almost on a quarterly basis, but a really big one annually. So like recently over these last 2 weeks, my wife and I have taken some time out just for us. Yes, we have 5 kids, but just for us to analyze, to take inventory. Do we want to keep doing the 18 Summers podcast? Do we want to keep doing this building venture? Do we want to go into more properties or sell properties? Do we want to build on our beachfront lot? Like there's decisions that have to be made, and we have to take inventories. We ask this question: are we working with the right people? And to be clear, my wife is not in my real estate business. However, my wife is very aware of where all of our cash is, where our investments are, how they work, what they're doing. And I know some people keep that completely separate, but I always saw that divorce rates were very high because of financial issues. And if your spouse, like, I don't care what entrepreneur, I know entrepreneurs, from all different walks that they've done really well. And all of a sudden, then cash has gotten tight because they've outlaid, they've done something. If your spouse doesn't know that, they might think they're upset with you, or, hey, let's go on this big trip and this big spending thing right now at the worst possible time. I love that my wife knows exactly our money positions, our investments, how they work, our insurance policies, everything we're working on. And she has a say in that, or at least questionings in that. She doesn't work intimately in my build to rent business, but she understands the movements and what's happening. And actually, not only do we do a big taking of inventory, I call it taking inventory, Mike, every year. Should we be working it? Do we want to be in Costa Rica still? Where do we want to travel? What costs don't we need? What costs do we want to add? What more health things do we want to add to our regimen? We're always taking that inventory and then adding it, and then keeping a kind of not checklist, but are we getting it done? So every Thursday for half a day, we meet with our CFO. Keith taught me this. I have a cash dashboard. I want to know where all my things are. How are my properties performing? What fees am I owed for this or that, or closings am I owed for, so we can forecast, so we can know where cash is. I think one of the biggest stresses I see, Mike, out there is entrepreneurs in the beginning, they don't want to do the books. They put their head in the sand and they have no idea where they are. They're behind on their tax returns. They don't know where cash actually is. They're totally guessing. They don't know what their outlay of outgoing costs are. That's a very scary situation. It can put a lot of strain on your marriage. So I encourage people, one of the biggest things we've done is at least your spouse should know the overall workings of where you're invested, how it works. So God forbid something happens to you, they're not helpless. And secondly, I have good friends that I do an overall review with. I have my little Go Pod with GoBundance. A few guys in GoBundance that we do that. We look at our one sheet, we look at the things we're going to work on, we set goals, and we kind of question each other on it. And that's a really important process.
I'm glad you said that. Mike McCarthy was on the podcast. So listener, you could go back and listen to Mike McCarthy's episode where he riffs a little bit about the origin of GoBundance and what it is to be a Go Bro, as he calls it, and we call it. So that was going to be my second part of that question is like, what do you do to prepare for the conversation with your wife? Because my mind immediately went to how much preparation should I do before I have an annual conversation with Lindsay, my wife, around all of everything of auditing our decision-making, analyzing our finances. Is there a preliminary conversation that you have with you? Is that what you use your GoBros for?
No, we speak every Wednesday. Me and my little GoPod, Pat Hyben and two other guys, and we keep each other accountable. So that's more a constant course correction. And then we just, like this morning, we just discuss goals. And we'll say, well, that's great. Are you considering this? Are you considering that? I know you said you wanted to do that. So they help some. But for me and Jamie, again, you have to have times, and this is my book, of complete and total unavailability for the people you love the most, your children, your spouse. We do date night, every week. You'll see us in St. Augustine, normally walking around and having our time. So we're talking about these things of our overall plans, things we're wanting to do, our relationship. So it's not like once a year, but there's bigger times. And so this once a year time, and I don't remember where I got it from. It's not mine, Mike, but there was a simple 5-question thing of, what were your highlights for the year? What's the biggest lessons you've learned personally? What's the biggest lessons you've learned professionally? What are your core values you want to live by? What, based around all this, are the goals you want to set? 5 to 7 goals you want to set. So we do that together. We each, the other night, she read off her highlights of the year. I read off my highlights, her biggest lessons personally, mine biggest lessons personally, mine business, her business. Went over core values, that we shared, and then we each kind of set goals that have some overlap and then some separation.
That right there is going to be a little clip. So that was perfect. So thank you for that. I want to transition into the build to rent that you're doing here in Florida, selfishly, just so I know, because I'm in the area,
Yeah.
and frankly, maybe some listeners might want to get involved. I mean, you have, if I'm reading this right, over $300 million in deals in 2022. But obviously, right now, we're in 2024. So, why don't you catch us up a little bit? Where are you at right now with the focus with the build to rent in Florida, and like, if somebody has capital they want to deploy, just hypothetically, what is the process? What are you doing? Yeah, well, why don't you just riff on what's the focus right now?
Yeah, well, Build to Rent came about, about 10 years ago. And what I learned, the same lessons as you did, I was always told, get in the 100 house club. 100 houses, you're set for life, and so I hit that and then about double that. But no one talks about the quality of the houses. And quality is a big part. And people say, what is the biggest lesson you've learned in the last 24 years? And it's this: own less of better quality with less leverage. You want to have less stress as a real estate investor. You want to have more downside protection. Own less of better quality with less leverage. That way, if you're leveraged to the hill on properties that have deferred maintenance, and you go into a sideways time like '08, like I did, it nearly bankrupted me. So I have a very different approach. I also don't want properties that have a lot of headaches and a lot of turnover and a lot more unknowns. And that's kind of what took us from fixing up old properties to new construction. New construction is more predictable. It has less headaches, less surprises, better longevity for the tenants and the overall condition of the property, and better overall growth. So that's why we went into it. And we stick with residential, single family, duplexes, and quads. Three major building blocks of wealth within residential real estate. And we do it in high growth markets in Florida. Jacksonville has a lot of population growth, economic growth, a good affordability index, a great desirability for living, and healthy supply and demand, meaning there's more houses that need to be built to help all the people that are moving here. And that's what we do in about 12 different markets in Florida. And again, we are trying to build A houses and B neighborhoods. These are in areas that you and I would walk down the street, Mike, at 9 o'clock on a Saturday if we had to, and not be fearful. And that's important to me because I haven't always invested that way. And for people, especially that want to be hands off, most of the people that work with us, they're successful in their career or their profession or their business. They want to be involved in real estate. They want to be in a landlord friendly area. They don't want the headaches. So they don't want to be the complete, DIY. They don't want to be that do-it-yourselfer, finding the deals and finding the contractors and managing. So that's where our program kind of comes into play. We work only in new construction and high growth areas, provide management and even in-house financing. We're always trying to figure out what is preventing people from building into a real estate portfolio and passive income. Interest rates are the biggest issue right now. So about a year ago, we designed our own in-house financing. So where most people are getting locked in at 7.5%, 8%, we're getting our people in today at 4.75 if they want a 10-year fixed 30-year AM or a 30-year AM for 5.25. So we're undercutting them by about 3% of the average market right now. And with this package, why we do this is because we want the overall program. Right now, we're with nearly 1,000 investors, and we feel we can take that to about 5 times that, because right now we're already holding 5,000 lots in Florida and looking to grow into 2 other states of Tennessee and Texas.
It's interesting you say this. We had Adam Zock on the podcast, a fellow firm, dad, brother, and he's talking about building it. We called it like Tinder, but for build to rent almost, where it's like having a book of the renters who want to have a good house, but pairing them with investors who want to put their capital to work. So it's like almost like a buy me a house and pairing the investors. It was a really cool concept.
Cool.
For you, what you're saying is the investors, are they getting like that 5% or that 4.75%? Like to lend, so they're like, you're pulling their money and then the kickback goes to them at that 4%.
No,
so it's like almost like
much more simple than that. We are building properties for direct property ownership. So we're not a fund. We used to have a fund. We don't do a fund anymore. We build properties for individual investors. Most build to rent ventures out there, you can put money in and have a piece of the venture. You own your own property. And I love syndications and funds. I invest in them. I've made money in them. But most of my wealth has been created on direct property ownership, owning my own rental property and holding it in the right areas. So we're just giving people the opportunity to do that. You have the opportunity to buy a new construction property from us, single family, duplex, or quad. We'll finance it for you. You have to qualify for our investor program, with good credits and capital available. But we're locking people in at 4.75 to 5.25 right now. And then we will offer management ongoing if you so choose to use it. So it brings in all the pieces, but they own the property. If they decide to sell it in a few years because it goes up, that's up to them. If they decide to say, hey, thanks for managing it for a few years, we want to manage, that's up to them. But they are in full control as they own the property.
Okay, forgive me if I'm slow. I just want to make sure I'm getting this. So,
no, please, these are great questions.
So if I'm I'm an investor, let's say I want to buy a house. I'm going to just use 500K as a base number. Okay, $500,000 house. I need to put a certain amount down for that house. Typically, if I'm going to go buy this house or build this house, I want to build a $500,000 house. Am I spot on so far? I go to you and I say, I want you to build me a $500,000 house, or you say, I have a $500,000 house that we already have that we can build for you in a B neighborhood, an A house in a B neighborhood. I don't know if 500,000 is an A house in a B neighborhood. Maybe it's closer to like 750 or 800.
But down in Palm Coast, so you get a duplex for that, not just a single family, a duplex. So
duplex home, 500K, yeah, and then
you is yes. You could bring us that and say, I'd like you to build me this duplex. And you might have a lot or be identifying a lot. We'll build it for you. And we do that. We call it the Build on Your Own Lot program. So, or if you're coming to us to say, hey, I want to buy a new construction property in Florida, you'll work with one of our sales specialists that can identify the different markets, what the median buy-in is, what the rents are, what the economy is there, because we're in 12 different markets. And you can just step in and buy a new construction property that's going to be completed in anywhere as quick as 60 days. Because we're on a continual build cycle. So you can say, I'm looking to get into this type of area. I don't want a single family. I want a quad. We're already building. Again, we have hundreds of projects going on, and we don't release them for sale until they're almost complete.
Am I finding the renters for those properties as the investor?
Management company will do that. Now, if there's a small percentage that self-manage and do that, but most just say, no, I want to use your financing. Who do you use for insurance? Who do you use for title? And then we handle the management, and the management company does the filling job. And a lot of the times with our incentives programs that we have for our investor programs, they get the first year of property management free.
It's so timely. Like it's so interesting because we didn't know the area very well. So my wife and I, we moved here and we're renting a house in St. Augustine Shores, and we love it. Like I'm thrilled to be renting. So there's no like homeowner repairs and all this other stuff. Like I'm fired up about that. But because we owned in Clearwater, and every other week it was like, we got to fix something or spend money and this and that. It's like, oh God, it was a giant pain in the ass. So I'm at that chapter where I love the rent. But the guy across the street, it's interesting, in our neighborhood, I was just having a conversation with Al, and he's like, yeah, we're moving. We want to get a little bit larger piece of land. These were all built, 2-3 years ago. And I'm like, I started thinking that, before this conversation, that's why it's like timely. It's like, what if I bought his house and put renters in that house like me? I mean, our house is a little bit bigger, but we pay $3,000 a month. It's like, I wonder how much rent would be. And I even asked him, he's just like, probably $1,800 to $2,200 a month. I'm like, okay, $1,800 to $2,200 a month. How much would I need to put down to get the house? How do I find the renter? How to maintain the property? It's new construction, 2-3 years old. It just started reeling these wheels because most of my capital I have in like diversified. There's some in the market. There's some in syndication deals. There's some in, I borrow against my cash value life insurance policy. So there's still some in there, but there's a couple of like pie in the sky. Hopefully they turn into something, a little bit in crypto. So I'm pretty diversified in all these different areas, but I have been fearful to get back into the real estate market due to what happened to me when I was in my early 20s. With all of this ramble of context, if I'm an investor right now, 2024, this is being recorded January 3rd, I'm being told to almost like park my capital and wait for some things to kind of like unfold a little bit, wait for things to go on sale a little bit. It's hard to time the market, but that's kind of the noise on the street, at least the streets that I'm on. What would you say to any of that to be as liquid as possible at this stage?
Like that can be good advice at surface value. but you always have to scratch any deal that I've had to go into and has been worth it. You have to do some of your own underwriting, and so that's a blanket statement, and it's not an unwise one, but it's a blanket statement. So I always ask why. Well, why are you saying keep things on the side? Well, I think that markets are tapped out. Okay, which market? And that's a big question that I always ask, and I'll give you this example why. Like we've had a ton of buyers come from Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City is a really nice market. I have good friends there. A couple of them have come and bought a number of properties here with us in Florida. Well, their median income in Salt Lake City is about $61,000, and the median price of a home right now about $585,000. You come to Jacksonville, the median price of a home here about $300,000. So we're talking almost half, and the median family income, same thing, $61,000. So you cannot go off. Real estate is so localized, and the fundamentals, the numbers have to be looked at individually. You say, well, what market is tapped out? What's happening there? Another thing I say, well, why are you on the sidelines? Well, no, I think the pricing's still okay, but everything's negative cash flow because of interest rates. Yeah, that's true. I don't encourage negative cash flow investing. Is a very risky strategy, and for most, that's too risky. Not to try to just gain the equity and lose money every month. That can really be dangerous. But when I look at programs like ours and a few other people that have it, if we're providing the financing and it's not at today's interest rates, it's 3% lower, and the property is cash flowing right off the bat, does that make sense? And this is why that's the questions I ask people of why are you sitting on the sideline? What is the advice? And for some people, they say, no, that's still not risky. But what for most people I see is they think the market is tapped out and there's no cash flow. It's negative right now. I see for Florida markets, there is still room for growth based off of where other people are coming from, based off of what our local incomes are compared to the average price of a home. The inventory levels are still very low from the growth. And if you're going, well, I got to wait a few years for interest rates to come down. If you can find someone, and usually only builders with good balance sheets can offer this, offer to get you in, they've pre-bought a mortgage for you at 3% lower than what's being averaged out, offered out there. Well, then you're kind of checking all the box of now it's a green light, if that makes sense.
It's a very wise response. I love how you answered my question with several different questions and different scenarios. That just is a testament to your wisdom and understanding of the market. So I absolutely love that. Jim, I am so grateful for this conversation. There's again, several selfish questions that I'll have to save for a cup of coffee. But is there anything else that I didn't ask you before we transition to our final three questions, or any topics that we didn't hit on that you wanted to make sure we capture or hit on in this combo at all?
No, I think it's a great conversation. Real estate should be there to serve you, not to master you. It's there for you, not the opposite way. So I'm always trying to leverage my real estate to be, as Dan says, buy back my time and have a great family life. That's kind of been that's the tool I use it for. And it's very doable. If you want to learn more about our kind of playbook, our journey over the last 25 years as a family and using real estate to really leverage into a comfortable wealth position, we have a book coming out next month, Passive Income Playbook. So that'll talk about our family dynamic and our real estate dynamics, especially build to rent, which has had the most effect in 25 years of anything I've done for me and the investors I work with.
Mm. It's perfect because a lot of the followers, listeners in our community, they build a business, free their time up from the business, use the revenue from the business, reinvest the dollars from the business to passive income. So their time makes money, their business is a machine that makes money, and then their money makes money. It's a great cycle. It's like a flywheel, as Chris Larson on our podcast says. So 3 questions. These are quick hitting, top of mind, whatever comes for you. First question is, what do you think the world needs most today?
For entrepreneurs and family, execution. I mean, there is so much content out there that no one's able to focus and actually execute or actually take clear action and take it through to completion. So we need more action. and less content.
That's great. Second question, what are 1 to 3 books you think people should read?
I think the one behind you, Dan's, was a recent one that I read. It's great. I'm also a big fan of a book called The Empowerment Dynamic, which talks about living life as a creator instead of a victim. That's a really, really good one. And for more of a story read, I'm a big fan of The Alchemist. That was a great book that I've read with my sons.
It's one of my faves. Third question is, what does it mean to you to be better than rich?
Well, rich can be very imprisoning. And that's something that I didn't want to be imprisoned. I've told people I want to have a legendary family life. And there is no ego in when I say that, because for me, a legendary family life just means all the things I dreamed of as a kid that I could never do, that my parents could never provide, I'd be able to still live out and do. And then my father, who died 2 years ago on Christmas, I had an extra decade of fun and adventure with him after the kidney donation in good health, which I'm so grateful for. But he still struggled with money his whole life. And he was a great guy, and there were things he could never do. There were things he didn't get the chance to do that we shared loves of, like traveling to Ireland all the time and helping causes he cared about, not only with his time, but with money. So I said, as a legendary family life, I'm going to do all the things my dad never got a chance to do in his lifetime. And that gives me a real momentum and foundation that I feel is strong and worthy, that keeps me propelling forward.
Sorry to hear about your dad 2 years ago, and also grateful that you shared that with our listener, because it's a life circumstance that everyone's going to deal with at some point. So for you to turn it into a gift is beautiful. So Jim, if people want to stay in touch with you, if they want to get access to the passive income playbook, learn more about Build to Rent in Florida, like how could they stay in touch with you?
Yeah, a great starting point is jjplaybook.com. That's just a easy website with downloads of showing about how does our real estate journey work, how do we run our family to try to have that legendary, enjoyable feel. So you can start there. And also, obviously, the book, The Family Board Meeting, is available at Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, wherever you want to see it.
Jim, can't thank you enough, man, for this conversation, for your time. And listener, of course, we can't have this podcast without you. So thanks for tuning in. And if you wanted to watch us on YouTube, if you're on Spotify or Apple, the book that he says, the book behind me, is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. So if you want to see my bookshelf, hop on YouTube so you can see all the different books that are behind me. Keith Cunningham's We're Less Stupid that we reference as well. But again, thank you for listening in. And as always, leave today better than you found it. Till next week. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram at betterthan_rich and join our Facebook group at The Better Than Rich Show. Thanks again for listening. We look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, leave today better than you found it.